1972 was really a year of transition for the Jefferson Airplane and their Long John Silver LP. I've got Ernie Cefalu with us, Ernie's Corner. Ernie, do I see cigars? Are you passing them out?
Oh man, you bet. I got a great story about that too for all our neighbors on the block. This is, and again, thank you, Joyce, for making this possible, and for all my neighbors here on the block. It's really great hanging out on the corner, and thank you for coming out and hanging out with me. It's an interesting time because, like you said, 72 was a transition time for the Jefferson Airplane, and it was a transition time for me too. I had graduated in 1969. I lived in Oakland. We used to go party. Most of the kids that I went to college with lived in the Haight-Ashbury. They lived in communes. There was only 125 full-time students in arts and crafts, and it was a small accredited college. It was on an estate that was crazy. I mean, and our teachers were insane. My English teacher, Michael McClure, was a Hell's Angel and, a poet, and hung around with Ferlinghetti and Ginsberg and people like Bob Dylan, so it was in a crazy time, and a time for me in 1972, having gone to New York, having done what I did with Jesus Christ Superstar and Alice Cooper's Schools Out and the Rolling Stones song and Grand Funk Railroad, coming back out to Los Angeles toward the end of 1971 to open up a satellite office for Craig Braun. In 1972, January 1, we started Pacific Ioneer. And about 4 months into the company, we get reached out to by the Jefferson Airplane. And it was really pretty amazing because, again, we'll go back to go forward. In the 60s, when we were partying, on Haight-Ashbury and hanging out in front of Grunt Records, which was the big Victorian house with all the gingerbread and crazy colors. And we're partying out there and music's blasting, incense everywhere, blacklight stores. I was a total Jefferson Airplane freak, okay? White Rabbit for me was like one of the first times I ever took LSD. We spent hours listening to that White Rabbit over and over, and all the symbolism that was in it. And so I was a huge fan. And so when we got reached out to in 1972 to meet with them, it was like, you got to be kidding me. My partner came in and said, okay, we're saddle up, we're going to San Francisco, and we're going to, meet with the Jefferson Airplane. And I'm like, I thought he was kidding me. I said, "There's stop. We're only 4 months into the company. We're still three of us living up on Ivar and Vine above Capitol Records in the hills, and our little one-bedroom house was our office. We hadn't even moved down into the crossroads of the world yet. We were just this little 3 or 4 people, and so we end up going there, and we actually. There's one other thing that we need to know. One of the reasons they had reached out to us was because there was a creative director at RCA Records named A.C. Lehman, okay? And A.C. Lehman was a big fan of Craig Braun and the company and the work that they were doing. And when I first joined Craig Braun, I was introduced to A.C., and he was an old guy. Guy had to be like 300 years old. But he was really funny, and he was a great creative director. And he was working on a Jefferson Airplane album called Bark. And he needed some ideas. And I had come up with this idea of a paper bag, a brown paper bag. You put the record in the brown paper bag, and, you could, that's how it should be. And so he used that. He took the credit for it, which is what creative directors do. I mean, they take the credit. Whether they ended up doing the thing or not, they took the credit. But AC was the kind of guy that reciprocated in like fashion. He then had the assignment for the Jefferson Airplane for Long John Silver, which is what you see behind me now. The poster that you see over here is actually Rip Torn, the actor. So if you don't know who Rip Torn is, Google him. He was in Men in Black. He was in all these movies. He was also blackballed in the 50s by McCarthy. That when they were accusing, all the Hollywood actors of being communists and all that stuff, Rip Torn was one of the ones that got prosecuted, and he wouldn't turn anybody in. So he was ostracized for years after that, not being able to get any acting work. But he had become good friends, because he lived in Northern California. He had become good friends with the Jefferson Airplane. So when we came up with the idea of doing the cigar box and Long John Silver, we needed somebody to be Long John Silver. And they said, hey, we've got this friend, Rip Torn, and he'd definitely do it. So he got on a plane and flew to LA, and we did this photo shoot. And he's got a bird. You can't see it too well, but he's holding the Cigar Box album. He's got a bird on his shoulder. It's a stuffed bird, but it looks real. And with toothpaste, we put bird crap all over his shoulder. So there's all this bird. And the cigars you see that we used in the sleeve, it was a heavy-duty sleeve because the album cover folded up into a cigar box. Okay, I was very heavy into construction and getting people involved in interacting with more than just taking the record out of the sleeve and putting it on the turntable and reading the liner notes. I wanted to get them more involved. And marijuana was a huge thing and part of the whole movement. So I created the cigar box that we had bought a pound of pot, and we printed that on the bottom. So when you construct the cigar box, it's got all this pot there. It looks, and what you did in those days, pot came with seeds. So you'd put it in the box and tilt the box and, go like this, and all the seeds would roll down to the bottom, and you had the pot without the seeds because you couldn't smoke the seeds. They kind of popped in the joint and stuff like that, or in a pipe. So, I came up with this idea of doing this cigar box and figured out this construction. I mean, it's really amazing construction because it comes 12 3/8 by 12 3/8, but it folds up into a rectangular cigar box. And that meant that the sleeve for the record needed to be a heavy-duty sleeve so that it would protect the record when you put it in with the other albums in your collection. So what we did was on the sleeve itself, we printed, and I don't know whether you can see this one illustration over here has the box opened up. If you Google Long John Silver, it has bigger pictures and stuff. And when you see this, when you post it, you'll be able to see it better. But we bought down in Mexico, they have all these big cigars. They call them horse poop cigars. And so we bought a bunch of them, and we lined them all up and took a photograph of them. And then I made these little cigar bands that went on them. Well, when Rip came to do the photo shoot, we had to have him. Oh, look at that. It looks like my head's floating. All right. I'm talking about these heady groups. That's what it is. So he started smoking one. And I mean, they're terrible. And eyes were, watering and is drooling. I mean, it was crazy, but he was a real trooper. And when you'll see the poster up close, you'll see he's got this cringing look on his face, and, it's all hanging down. And, we actually had become the agency for Grunt Records for about 6 months. We did 3 or 4 albums for them. Jorma Kaukonen's brother, Peter, we did an album for him. We worked with the Jefferson Airplane when they did Baron von Tollbooth and the Chrome Nun. We did that album cover, and we worked with them. We did some ads and stuff, and then things changed and we moved on and stuff. But it was really great being able to meet with them. And there's a picture you see here. Let me get out of the way. If I can move the right way. No, I got to move this way. Of Peter Kaukonen and Grace Slick at the office. And she was amazing. She had purple eyes. It was so crazy. And her eyes were beautiful. And, they came to the office a couple of times because they were recording at Wally Heider in San Francisco. And then a lot of times groups would record somewhere else, and then they'd go to another facility or a similar facility, because Wally Heider was in San Francisco as well as Los Angeles. And so when they would come to Wally Heider, both for Long John Silver and Baron von Tollbooth and the Chrome Nun, we got a chance to meet them. They would come over to the office and hang out. We'd party. I mean, it was really a great time. And for me, it was amazing because I never, ever dreamed, I could say that about a bunch of bands that I, am a huge fan of, but, I never dreamed that you were going to be able to work with them and be part of creating their image, creating their brand, which is really, really something that I was able to do. And, hopefully next time we'll talk about another one. So as far as the song goes for this album, I think Long John Silver, the title song, would be a great one to play. And it's up to you, Joyce, whatever you'd want to hear too. We can do more than one if you want. I know you've been really generous with playing some of the songs that we talk about, the band. So, but Long John Silver was a good cut. Unfortunately, the album didn't do as well as other albums. But, again, like other albums, like we talked about Lou Reed, album that we did for him was really not, Berlin was not really well accepted, but now it's considered one of the top albums, a top 500 in the top 500 by Rolling Stone magazine. So, it takes a while sometimes for people to rediscover stuff. And that's the good news about music. You keep rediscovering it. Every generation keeps rediscovering it. So that's why I feel that I've been able to make a mark. I've left my mark. When I'm gone, the people will still be rediscovering the music and seeing the graphics that we created. And it was a great time. And, and I've had my moment in the sun, but I've been lucky enough to perpetuate it. I still get my moments in the sun, and it can be done if you stay true to who you are and what you believe to be true and what you can do. And I've been very blessed, and blessed by meeting you, Joyce, and being able to do this as well. I really appreciate it.